Welcome, everyone, to Bet What Happens Live. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me for this Sunday's slate, I got my man from the Touchdown Show, Gilles Gallant, one of those things. I always forget how to say it. Gilles, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, other than the fact that my Cowboys are getting super pumped right now by these Saints to the point where it's this kind of game. Derek Carr hasn't ran for a touchdown in almost 4 seasons. Today, he scampered one in one little 1 yard dash. So even if you were with somebody maybe like you have Alvin Kamara, let's say, and you wanted to be greedy and you had 3 touchdowns already, well,
Yep.
you just got vultured for the 4th touchdown for Alvin Kamara today.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Saints and the Dallas Cowboys, as well as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions. Before we get to that, make sure you hit the like button so we can keep doing these, especially on Sundays, since we added them this year. If you like Bet What Happens Live, we've been helping you out. We're up over 25 units in the past year plus of doing this. Give it a thumbs up. That way we can keep doing these, and we appreciate y'all for watching. So right now, Tampa Bay and Detroit is at halftime. So let's start there. Gilles, what are you looking at in this one?
Well, the first thing I was thinking of is that Jared Goff, I feel like, has just been a little bit unlucky throwing the ball today. I think that he could actually have more passing yards than what he has right now. He has 136 passing yards. I think there's going to be a heavy passing script in the second half. Right now, the over-under I'm seeing is around 304 for his passing yards today against the Bucs at halftime.
304. All right. So let me pop that line in there. I put 604. uh, Interestingly enough, now, okay, so Detroit is starting with the ball, but 304 is a pretty tall task here. We have Jared Goff projected for 272 live right now. So if anything, we're looking at an under in this one.
I mean, that's like a 30-yard discrepancy. Do we want to just lock in the under now just based on the formula?
Yeah, I think let me real quick just double check here and make sure we're good. Yeah, 272 yards. That is, like you said, quite a ways. We have about 65% of the under. The only thing is, of course, Detroit is starting with the ball, so I'd say it's more like a 58-60% edge to the under, but I still think we got to take the under here.
All right, let's lock that in right now. Then if we got that kind of discrepancy in edge, 30 yards on that, let's lock in under 304.5 for Jared Goff.
Yeah, so under 304.5 passing yards for Jared Goff. And I like this because right now, if we look at the odds, it's pretty much a coin flip. FanDuel has -120 for Tampa Bay, -106 for Detroit on the money line. So Detroit isn't necessarily going to be as pass happy as we think. And actually, my in-game model is saying Detroit might be around 2% more run heavy than we think. So a little counterintuitive spot, which is why we're looking at the under there on Jared Goff. Where else are we going in this game, Gilles?
Well, if that's the case, then maybe we need to start looking at the fact that they're probably going to run the ball maybe a little bit more, especially on Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Montgomery, I'm just going to pull this up. He has 21 rushing yards in the half. It's been pretty much split between him and Jahmyr Gibbs when it comes to attempts. But right now, both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, 22 and 21 rushing yards. The over-under line is pretty much the same, 44.5 for David Montgomery and 43.5 for Jahmyr Gibbs. The only thing that I would just say with Gibbs is the caveat is I would maybe consider rushing and receiving. He's gotten a couple of targets already in the first half, but let's just stick with the rushing prop for the start. What do you think of David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs getting a little bit more second half work?
Yeah, well, Jahmyr Gibbs is at 41.5 over at FanDuel. We're showing over on both Montgomery and Gibbs. Montgomery's actually 43.5 on FanDuel. Because we're showing over on both, I do want to take a look at Jahmyr Gibbs rushing plus receiving because, like you mentioned, he's potentially going to get a lot of action, especially if we're in the situation where Detroit continues to trail, right? So Jahmyr Gibbs actually kind of benefits regardless. They could be more rush heavy than we think, and he could get a few more rush attempts. But if they stay behind, he could also get those receiving looks. So if you see any rushing plus receiving props, we could look at that. Otherwise, we can also just look at his receiving.
The rushing and receiving off the hop was a little hefty, but not too much. It was 67.5. And right now he has 27 combined rushing and receiving yards.
All right, 27 combined. So 5 receiving yards, which means we're projecting him for 68.5. I don't remember what you said the line was.
It was 67.5, and that's one only at Bet365. You might be able to
Gotcha.
find, I was just looking, I saw 66.5 at another spot too, but I'm not sure if 2 yards is enough of an edge there. I
Sure.
do I do like the idea of them getting into the end zone, but I think we'll stick just with the rushing yards. I really like Jahmyr Gibbs in the second half here, especially if they're trailing. I think he'll be out
Yeah.
there more for
I
passing
think
downs.
Gibbs is the one we'll go with here. 42.5 rushing yards now at FanDuel. It was 41.5. I guess you guys must have already bet it up. 42.5. We're still showing value to the over there on Jahmyr Gibbs, -113 at FanDuel, locking it in as our second bet here on Bet What Happens Live. Gilles, you mentioned it. Talk about some touchdowns, maybe.
Well, the touchdown market, and the one thing I was going to say too, was even just from a receiving yard standpoint, Mike Evans has basically been blanketed this entire game.
Mhm.
Chris Godwin has been getting most of the work so far. Mike Evans for a touchdown is at plus 275 to have a touchdown. He was opening at plus 125 in the game, but like pregame as somebody who tracks the odds. But then even his receiving yards right now, it's at 43.5. He has 16. He could probably get that on one catch, depending on what Baker's going to be doing here in the second half. Because I mean, it's only a one-score game. I don't think they're just going to go completely run heavy with Rashad White. So let's look at the touchdown market first.
Mhm.
275 for Mike Evans. Is there any value on that?
No, we actually have Mike Evans at plus 325. But I will say, I'm looking at FanDuel here, and Mike Evans is 3-1 there, so still not quite. Also, at FanDuel, we have Cade Otton 9-1 and Chris Godwin for his second touchdown plus 470. I have thin value on both of those. The only thing is Tampa Bay does not start with the ball here, so it's probably right around fair odds on both of those players as well. So I don't see a ton in the Tampa Bay side of things as far as touchdown value, at least in the passing game.
Right. Okay. So from a the other thing too is just seeing Rashad White. This is the one thing that just noticed in the game as well. If you're watching the first half, is that Hutchinson has basically been able to do whatever he wants to this offensive line. And I'm a little worried that Rashad White is going to have any more receptions because he might have to block like a lot in the second half. I was kind of wondering about if there might be any value on fading Rashad White here in the second half as they keep going here. And I'm just going to pull up the receptions right now. Rashad White, it's off the board at one book. Let me try another one here.
Yeah, he did have a little bit of an injury, came back in. So potentially some value in fading him just off of that aspect as well. Just looking at his rushing, 6 rushes, 13 yards. And of course, in the receiving game, not a single target for Rashad White.
That's why, like, I'm trying to find it right now. They kind of have, I think they have him off the board due to injury risks, so we might have to pivot there on Rashad White. Um, okay, let me
Yeah,
look at the
no
touchdowns here
props for
again.
Rashad White that I'm seeing as well. So let's look
Yeah,
back at
so
the
I
touchdowns.
okay, so we liked Gibbs to kind of looking at the rushing, receiving, or even the over on the rushing yards. Right now, they have him for a touchdown around plus 140. They were both Montgomery and Gibbs were minus odds coming into the game. Same thing with St. Brown, might have been around plus 110. But the guy that like has been was the touchdown monster on this team was Sam Laporta, your boy. And right now I'm seeing him around plus 270. I'm wondering if there's any value on that front for Sammy Ballgame.
We're not showing any value on Laporta, unfortunately. And in fact, and both running backs were also not showing value on their anytime touchdown odds. Jameson Williams, nope. Khalif Raymond, nope. Man, this might not be the game to bet touchdowns, Jill. Maybe we should look at interceptions.
All right. So both of them have an interception so far in this
Yeah.
game. You were on Baker Mayfield to have most interceptions for the season. So you're probably not shocked that that came through. But right now, they've got him to throw another Baker to throw another interception in this game at plus 210 and
Mhm.
Jared Goff at plus 190. I'm a little iffy on whether Baker is going to throw a pick here in this game, but there's no way I was going to take the under at minus 270 right now for him not to have an interception in the second half. So it's either you
Right.
take an interception or we don't take it at all. Is there any value for Baker to throw an interception around plus 210?
We got plus 210 right on the dot. So no value
Oh,
there. Interestingly enough, we have value on Jared Goff under 1.5 interceptions, minus 245. I'm seeing at FanDuel. I don't know if you've seen any other better lines out there. for
It's
the
it's
under.
minus 240 around there. So it's right around minus 240. It's right on the nose as far as where
Yeah,
your
we have
formula is
minus
this time.
300 as fair. So I'm never opposed to taking minus odds. It didn't work out in one of our recent games as well, but I'm never afraid to do it when we're showing value on a pretty hefty favorite. So I'm going to do it. You don't have to tell me, but I'm
Okay.
going to take Jared Goff under 1.5 interceptions at minus 240. Just going to put, 1.2 units on it to win half a unit. We don't need to go crazy there. So Jared Goff, 1.2 units, minus 240 to be under 1.5 interceptions is our third bet for this game. I'll bet what happens live. Any others here before we switch over to Dallas, New Orleans?
This just correlates to what we went with the under on passing yards for Jared Goff, especially with the fact that you're probably thinking that an interception is less likely if it's more of a run heavy script in the second half. Well, right now, his over under for passing attempts in the second half, like he has 24 passing attempts. It's at 44 and a half, minus 115 on each side. If we're already looking at fading on the yards, do we want to
Yeah.
maybe consider a double down on attempts?
Yeah, we have 41 attempts. Now, of course, they are starting with the ball, so he'll probably have a few extra on this drive. So I think I don't necessarily want to double down. I just want to kind of take the yards there. And
All right.
even though we do have value on it, it's just with the fact that they have the ball, the attempts are going to come maybe a little bit easier than the yards, right? Because you can throw some incompletions. So I think we'll just stick with the yards, but I do like that thought. I technically have value on it.
All right. So we've got the under on passing yards. We've got the over on rushing yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. And then we're
Mhm.
also on, well, you're on specifically,
Under,
but I
yeah.
endorse it, which is Jared Goff under 1.5 interceptions. So no more picks for the rest of the game. And then from a touchdown score perspective, like if you could find Mike Evans at maybe over plus 310 somewhere,
Yeah.
that's right around the fair odds. I would probably, that's the guy I would consider for the Buccaneers at this stage. But right now, it's right around 3-1. You're probably just going to best bet just to sit aside for this game.
Absolutely. So we are going to transition over to the Dallas Cowboys and New Orleans Saints game. But before we do that, make sure if you want access to my in-game player prop model to use code LIVE20 to get $20 off the annual rate of Action Pro. Comes in handy right now because, hey, we got 10 games going on at once. You could literally see my model's current projections, compare them to all the different books out there and find the biggest edge. Just make sure you use code LIVE20 to get $20 off the annual rate of Action Pro. And one more time, make sure to hit that like button because we're going to dive into Dallas versus New Orleans. Gilles, your Cowboys are down 19. They did get a field goal there to close out the half. Where are we looking at for touchdowns or other bets in this game, knowing Dallas is going to start with the ball in the second half?
Well, I'm trying to figure out a way to will into existence Derek Carr having a horrible second half, but I don't know if there's actually projection value on this. So the first thing that I looked at was passing yards, but it's only about 100 more than what he has right now. So instead, I wanted to look at passing attempts because right now he has 11 passing attempts at halftime. And right now, like you said, the Cowboys are starting with the ball. It's double that. It's 22 and a half for total passing attempts. I'm just thinking, like, again, if Dallas is still having trouble moving the ball, they've had a lot of success running the ball on this defense right now. And a lot of those yards and attempts are just basically bombs to Shaheed and Olave. So I was kind of trying to think if there's a way that we could maybe fade Derek Carr into oblivion here.
Well, I'm looking at it and I'm actually showing overs on Derek Carr.
For
Over on
passing.
attempts.
Okay.
Yep. Over on attempts, over on yards. Uh, and the reason is, right, Dallas was favored in this game by 6
Right.
points, 6.5, something in that neighborhood. So even though New Orleans is ahead by 19, there's a chance Dallas comes back here. And so I think obviously, it's baking in a little bit of that. Now it is saying my model is saying New Orleans should be 10.5% more rush heavy than their pregame projections, but it doesn't mean New Orleans is just going to completely stop throwing the ball, right? I have them passing around 47% for the rest of the game. So Derek Carr is still going to get some attempts in here and some work in here.
All right, then. Well, then let's flip it right to interceptions because right now he has yet to throw an interception in this game. The interception line, it was around minus 120 coming into the game. Now it is plus 310. And if you're looking
Yeah,
at,
yeah, we're taking that, Jill.
all
I
right,
got plus 255, so we're taking
yeah,
plus
let's do it.
310. You want to do a half unit on that one?
Yeah, just a half because we're at plus 310. And I have a couple of touchdown scores that I'm interested in as well. But I think Derek Carr, if we're going to be seeing a potential comeback, it's going to happen on the turnover front. So I'm going to will that into existence.
Absolutely. So Derek Carr interception plus 310 at FanDuel, half a unit is our first bet for the Dallas New Orleans game. Where are we going next, Jill?
I want to look at the touchdown score market. We can look at the rushing yards and maybe look at Kamara a little bit more and see if there's anything that we want to like go with or fade. But from a touchdown score perspective, so we saw CeeDee Lamb score. Alvin Kamara pretty much had all the touchdowns except for Rashid Shaheed. And then, of course, Derek Carr waddles in there at the end. But what I'm getting at is that if you're kind of implying that the passing game is not going to fall off in the second half, I'm looking at some of these wide receivers. Like Chris Olave is around 4-1 to score a touchdown in the second half. Um, uh, Juwan Johnson, I'm not as high on, around plus 650 because he was plus 450 coming into the game. But even like somebody like Foster Moreau is around 10-1. He's getting pretty much as many snaps as Juwan Johnson. Is there any value on any of these pass catchers for touchdown scores? Specifically, I wanted to look at Chris Olave.
Yeah, Olave, I have plus 650, and I see 6-1 at FanDuel. But Rashid Shaheed for his second touchdown is 9-1. I've got plus 750 as fair value
Oh,
on that one if you want to sprinkle a little Rashid Shaheed.
I would probably do a half unit on that. I wouldn't do a full
Half
unit at
unit.
nine to
Woo!
one.
I was thinking like quarter unit.
You want to do quarters?
Yeah,
We
quarter
could scale
unit.
down a little bit. Maybe I'm just
Quarter
trying to
unit
like
at 9-1, right? We're getting a little to the point, right, where, and we talked about this, the Saints should be more run heavy, 10% more than pregame projection, but they could still pass. But I don't want to go crazy on the passing simply because they're still more likely than not to be run heavy, right?
right.
So just a quarter unit on Rashid Shaheed, 9-1 for 2+ touchdowns. Anything on the Dallas side of the ball?
Well, the Dallas side of the ball, they're obviously going to have to throw quite a bit, but the running back that I think is going to get a lot more work in the second half is Rico Dowdle over Ezekiel Elliott, especially on passing downs. Right now, Rico Dowdle's over under receptions line is at 2.5. He had one catch in the first half. He had two targets, but one catch. I'm trying to see if there's any value on maybe getting on the backup running back, especially in this hurry up offense that I anticipate for the Cowboys.
Yeah, so on his receiving, you said 1 for 9, right?
Yeah, so receptions, yeah. So 2.5 is the line, and the receiving yards for him, let me just get that, is 17.5. So one more catch. I mean, in theory,
All right,
but
let me look at
17.5.
let me look at that. Yeah, we're not quite showing value on his overs there. If anything, just a small bit of value to the under.
Okay. All right. So at this stage, I mean, a lot of the lines for, like CeeDee Lamb right now, receiving yards, it's like 147.5 off that one bomb. Jalen Tolbert is around 45.5, 27 yards. Brandon Cooks hasn't really been involved at all. It's at 50.5. And he's kind of, I don't want to call him a one-trick pony, but I'm kind of wondering if there might be some unders on like Brandon Cooks because he hasn't really been a factor other side of like one catch.
Yeah, 2 for 19 yards for Brandon Cooks. What's his current receiving yards line, you said?
Yeah, so it is at 50.5.
50.5. Let me just check a couple other books here, make sure we're finding the best. Yeah, 50.5 is what I'm seeing as well. We're showing 55% to the under, so it's probably not enough where we're beating the juice at a significant rate.
Right.
But it is a lean to the under there. I want to circle back to Rico Dowdle because you mentioned backup running back could get some usage in the passing game, etc. Dallas, of course, is also starting with the ball. We have plus 450 on his touchdown, and I'm seeing 5-1 at FanDuel. If you instead of taking his yardage, just take his touchdown odds.
I mean, I would be into that. I think if anything, it would probably be another half unit play or at least a quarter unit, but I wouldn't probably do a full unit on Rico
Yeah.
just because I'm not fully sure how much he's going to be involved in the second half. They might still sprinkle Ezekiel Elliott in there every once in a while, but at 5-1, I would definitely do another quarter unit if you're into
All right,
it.
let's do quarter unit on Rico Dowdle, 5-1 for an anytime touchdown. That way we get exposure to the guy that Gilles was looking at. We're just doing it in a different way than backing his receiving yards. So Rico Dowdle, anytime touchdown, 5-1 quarter unit. Real quick, I do want to look at the Dallas passing game. Dak, 370.5 is the line. And I'm showing 341.5, but of course, Dallas is starting with the ball, so probably no value in the under there. And then in the interception market, we looked at Derek Carr. Dak is pretty much even money on either way to throw an interception, over 1.5 or under 1.5, when you take out the juice. So we're not really showing any value there either as well. Any other final thoughts, Jill, on this one before we let everybody get to the second half?
I am probably going to funnel a few beer right now because of my sorrow, unless somehow Dallas comes back and makes a miraculous comeback and Derek Carr throws an interception and Rico Dowdle scores another touchdown, and then it'll just be celebratory drinks at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I'm gonna look at CD Lamb because his line I'm seeing is pretty high.
Yeah, it was
143.5. That's a lot. That's crazy. We're right at 143.5. That's pretty incredible. So it's good to be in line with the market. It means you have a good model. But no value on CD Lamb, no value on Brandon Cooks. Like we said, we looked at his under, and it was thinnest value to the under, so not going to bet that. So, Gilles, I think we're going to wrap it up there and let everybody watch the second half. I see they just kicked off. So, enjoy the games, everybody. Good luck with your bets, and we'll see you back here on Bet What Happens Live for Monday Night Football.